We got Dalton Risner heading into the building tonight, ladies and gentlemen. It's been 2 months, but I have said the Vikings need to look at Dalton Risner, or at least give me a good reason why he shouldn't be looked at. And we haven't heard anything. Everybody talking about, well, maybe he's injured, maybe this, maybe that. Maybe I don't care. Maybe get him in the building and maybe look at him and say, you know what? Yeah, you're injured. We're not offering you a contract. But up until this point, to not even bring him in to have a look was beyond me. We've talked all off season. We just need the defense to be a little bit better, and we need to see the offense continue to grow. Well, you know what? Your growth potential by replacing Adam Thielen with Jordan Addison is all well and good, and maybe moving on from Dalvin Cook and doing the running back by committee. But when you got the same interior offensive linemen that are kind of mediocre at pass blocking, I don't know how much movement you can do. Yes, I get my point Brother Dave always makes. Consistency is good, particularly with the offensive line, and I do agree with that. But when you're consistently mediocre on the interior, what good does that really do? First thing I would ask, are they taking him right to TCO? Or are they going to take him to Manny's Steakhouse? Either way, do whatever you need to do. Get this man in the building and sign him. If it's a 1-year minimum, veterans minimum, great. If it's a multi-year contract, great. I don't care. Get this guy in here. We need help on the interior of our offensive line. Ezra Cleveland, and what's great about Dalton Risner, by the way, second-round pick, he's the antithesis of Ezra Cleveland. Ezra Cleveland is a very, very good run blocker and a mediocre at best pass blocker. Dalton Risner is quite literally the exact opposite. He's a great pass blocker and a okay run blocker. That's what we need on this team. We've moved away from the Mike Zimmer run, pass. We're done with that. We're done with bell cow running backs. We're going to running back by committee. We need Dalton Risner in this building, and I've said it for 2 months. Again, if he ends up getting here and we sign him, I don't know why you waited so long. I don't know why you didn't want to have him around for the offseason. Maybe he didn't want to be in camp. I don't know. I don't care. If Dalton Risner lands and you wine and dine this guy, there better be a daggone good reason why you don't keep this guy, because you need him. You put a competition in there. I don't care whether you bench Cleveland, whether you bench Ingram, if he's healthy and he can still play. You built this team around an offensive-minded head coach. They were a top 10 offense last year, but they had a lot of boomer bust, a lot of 3-and-outs here, a lot of great drives, second halves, fourth quarters, all that good stuff. We've said it ad nauseum. That's great. But what we need is consistency on offense, and what Kirk Cousins needs more than anything. Y'all know how I feel about Kirk, but he's our guy for this year. So let's move on with what we're going to do in the future. Let's move on with what we think the ceiling may or may not be. He's our quarterback. We all knew he was getting pounded last year. We really saw how much he's getting pounded when we saw that Netflix documentary and how much work that young man needs to do just to get his body right to play every week. Maybe Kirk Cousins would be slightly more effective in the offense in general if he wasn't being picked up by Ezra Cleveland or Ed Ingram half the time. He goes back to throw a pass to Justin Jefferson, TJ Hawkinson, etc. I don't mean to go overboard on this. I know this guy's not Randall McDaniel or Steve Hutchinson, okay? I know that. I'm not getting too crazy here. But what I am saying is the one weakness you have offensively is that interior offensive line. You've got a top 10 quarterback. You've got the best wide receiver in the NFL. You've got a top 3 tight end. You've got KJ Osborne going into a contract season, and you drafted a wide receiver in the first round. You've got all the weapons in the world. But what happens when you go up against Philly, when they got defensive line for days? No pun intended. What happens when you go up against the Dallas Cowboys? What happens when you go up against the San Francisco 49ers? Yes, this offensive line was markedly better in 2022 than it was the last couple of years under Zimmer. I'll give him that. But I want to take a second and describe to you where the improvements were and where the weaknesses still are. When you got 3 kinds of defensive lines: outstanding defensive lines, good to mediocre defensive lines, and bad ones. Under Zimmer, we were getting dogfights against bad defensive lines, and we were getting smoked by mediocre defensive lines, and we were getting destroyed by great ones. Yes, this past season, against bad defensive lines, we dominated. Against middle-of-the-road defensive lines, we got in dogfights. I'll mention the Buffalo game. They got a good defensive line. We survived that game, barely. The Miami game, we didn't do anything offensively in that Miami game. We had 15 drives, and we had 11 3-and-outs. And actually a 12 3-and-out that was a field goal that we just happened to be 3-and-out and just kicked the field goal. So it doesn't go down in the record books as a 3-and-out, but it was. The Washington game, survived that game too. The Colts game, and I don't think the Colts defensive line was very good. We just didn't show up for the first half of that game, but I digress. My point is this. I like what this offensive line has done under KOC, and it has improved. That's true, and that's great. So what you've now done is against bad ones, you can dominate, and against middle ones, you can survive. But you're still going to get killed by dominant defensive line. You spend all this time, energy, and effort into having the best possible offense you can. Why in the world didn't you draft an offensive lineman at all? Why in the world didn't you bring in a free agent offensive lineman? There is no reason. Unless you bring in Dalton Risner and you give him a physical and you say, oh no, this guy's got a really bad injury, he's not healed from. Okay, fine. Yes, don't sign a guy that's injured just to sign a guy. But short of that, I want this guy on this team because that would move the needle offensively to allow you to do the things we've been talking about, allowing Kirk Cousins to get better the second year under the same offensive system, same training camp, etc. Running back by committee to have a little bit more consistency and not having a guy running for 0 and 1 yards half the time he touches the ball and not having as many 3-and-outs and allowing your defense to not be on the field as much. And then we can allow Brian Flores to be aggressive. And if you get burned once or twice a game, okay, you get burned once or twice a game. Fix this offensive line. Bring in Dalton Risner.